It was summer vacation. Emma, Noah, Olivia, Liam, Sophia, Ethan, Mia, and Lucas had arrived at a famous summer camp named Adventure Camp. The camp was located high among the mountains, near a dense forest. There was no cell service here, nor was there any internet. However, everyone used to say that the adventures at this camp were more exciting than any video game. On the first day, the children learned archery, rock climbing, and how to find their way in the forest. In the evening, they gathered around a large campfire. The camp leader, Mr. James, held an old compass in his hand and said, "This is no ordinary compass. It shows the hidden path only to brave and kind-hearted children. Legend has it that there is an island floating above the clouds. The light crystal is hidden there. If the crystal disappears, all the colors in the world will slowly begin to fade." At first, the children thought it was just a legend. However, at night, when Emma stepped out of her tent, she saw the compass glowing blue. She woke up her friends. The compass began to spin on its own and pointed deep into the forest. Everyone quietly followed it. A few minutes later, they arrived at a giant, ancient oak tree. A glowing door opened in the trunk of the tree. The children carefully stepped inside. Suddenly, the ground under their feet illuminated and began to lift them upward. A few seconds later, they were on a magnificent island floating above the clouds. The island was unbelievably beautiful. Rainbow-colored waterfalls flowed, the leaves of the trees sparkled with a golden hue, small dragons flew in the sky, and talking rabbits sang songs. Lucas asked in wonder, "Is this not a dream?" At that exact moment, a small, glowing fox came up to them. "My name is Spark," said the fox. "A dark shadow wants to take over the island. The light crystal has been stolen. Only children working together can bring it back." The children agreed without a second thought. Spark took them to the first trial. In front of them stood a giant stone door. Colorful lights blinked on the door. Suddenly, a message appeared. "What is the strongest key?" The options were sword, money, friendship. Noah smiled. "Friendship, of course." The door opened immediately. Inside, hundreds of light orbs were dancing in the air. One of them landed on Ethan's shoulder and transformed into a star map. The map showed their next stop. They reached the crystal lake. However, the water of the lake was icy still. Crossing it seemed impossible. Mia noticed strange symbols on the stones floating in the lake. The symbols lit up only when pressed in the correct order. Together, the children solved the puzzle. The stones glowed, creating a bridge over the lake. They crossed to the opposite shore. Suddenly, the sky darkened. A giant black shadow began to descend from the sky. The shadow's eyes were red like fire. It said in a booming voice, "No one can take back the light crystal." Even though Emma was afraid, she didn't step back. "We are scared, but we will not stop." The shadow began to laugh. At that moment, Spark said, "The shadow gains power from fear. If you are brave, it will weaken." The children held hands. They smiled at each other. The shadow began to shrink. Suddenly, a bright light appeared in the depths of the cave. The light crystal was there. Liam picked it up carefully. The crystal radiated light toward the sky. The clouds returned to their original color. The rainbow appeared once again. The trees bloomed. The small dragons circled happily in the sky. Spark smiled. "You saved the island." Then, he gave the children small glowing badges. These badges will always remind you that the greatest magic is unity, courage, and a good heart. Suddenly, a bright white light enveloped them. When the children opened their eyes, they were back at the camp. Morning had broken. It was as if nothing had happened. However, in each of their pockets was a small, sparkling star badge. Emma smiled quietly. Maybe the most wonderful adventures only happen to people who believe. From that day on, the children returned to that summer camp every year. They knew that the secret island above the clouds was still waiting for them, and that new adventures would never end.